you're here, and I'm so grateful that you actually attempted and maybe actually read my memoir. I'm told it's very detailed. So, any questions?
Well, I did finish the book, although I haven't read the paper in the last 3 days, but because I started early and was afraid I'd forget everything and didn't come back to it soon enough. I loved your story. I mean, all I can think is what a boring life I've led.
Yeah.
But and all the details about because I don't have a background in history, and I did better when I didn't try to go back and try to understand all that, because my head couldn't handle it. But some people reading it would want to, like Larry wants to read it because he's been a history buff and he'll tune into that more than I could. Out of all the history, what I got was, oh my gosh, all the turmoil everywhere, which is ongoing. So I think people can read it in the way that they can,
Well, I hate to say this at the WILPF meeting, right? But the feedback has been women say, what's all that history and politics? And guys say, what's all that personal crap?
You're kidding. Oh, you're
I
kidding.
kid you not.
But that's what makes it really interesting.
There's something for everyone.
But like guys, this particular one guy said that, what's all the personal stuff? And most women say, what's all that, politics and history? They connect to the personal stuff. Now, how about that?
Well, and I can understand that because same feeling Margot just expressed, and then I agree with what.
Oh, I'm muted. Oh, shit. Sorry. Margot, unmute yourself. I was muting someone who was making little sounds. Margot, you need to unmute your microphone. Just on the little microphone there.
Yeah, it should be okay.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm sorry. I was trying to mute somebody else.
Oh, that's not a.
Okay, I guess I was speaking, so you didn't hear what I was saying, Gloria?
No, Margot was muted. You're okay.
Oh, okay. Anyway, where was I like the writing, your style of writing, because it was very different for me. You interwove history along with your personal life, and as I knew you, I was really astounded by some of your life experiences, because I knew you in a different way from your background. But I was impressed I didn't think it was opinion, but you were making a lot of comments on the history of the various countries, the people that you met, talked with, and got to know fairly well. And I like that because, as I have always thought of you as a person of the world, and having read the book, I was interested in if you had any general comments about how the world could function better because of your personal experiences and the history that you talk about.
Well, when I was a young woman.
Excuse me, Galina, could we switch to her when she's talking?
What do you mean, Gloria?
Move the camera. It's on Emily.
Yeah, I moved my seat so you could see me better.
Well, move the turntable so when Galina's speaking,
No,
her.
you're fine there.
You're fine. Move the turntable.
I have refreshments over here, so.
So what?
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
But you're not doing it enough. There. Okay.
So when I, first of all, I grew up with my my mom's family and my dad's family. It so happens she was born in Ukraine, he was born in Russia. We always spoke Russian at home. Basically, then there was a civil war, there was a revolution. My dad was in a civil war for 2 years, and my maternal grandfather was in civil war for 2 years. Then they became immigrants, emigrate into Yugoslavia. Then they met. My mom was 8 years old, my dad was 20. When they moved, then they met and produced me. And so it's revolution, World War One, then World War II catches up with us in Yugoslavia. Then we end up in first in a forced labor camp in Germany, then refugee camps.
Hi, Georgia.
So basically, as I'm a teenager, and we end up of all places in Africa, I remember telling myself, why is the world such a mess? And then I was supposed to go and study in Paris, and I was going to take political science because I figured at the Sorbonne, they'll explain everything to me, why the world is such a mess. However, we ended up in Australia, and I didn't know a word of English, and the mess continued. And then I ran into Rick, who was Belgian born, and so the French language played Cupid to our romance. He was a corporate brat. His folks had been transferred all over the place. He decided to stay in Australia and finish his degree. He brings me here. So after this difficult life, I'm kind of, we both have a college education. He gets a good job, then they go to Berkeley. I have a comfortable middle-class life, basically an American life, right? And then, as I'm busy with family and career, by the way, I wanted to be a writer always, because that's one way to figure things out. But English, I'm fluent in Russian and French, and my German is okay, but English, I can go to the grocery store, but being a writer, not quite, right? So my husband talked to me and said, you always did well in school. Why don't you, go to grad schools? So family, career, blah, blah, blah. Then, I don't know if you remember this, Emily, 1999, we bombed Belgrade. We meaning the US. And I start my memoir with that.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm telling myself, I was a 3-year-old being bombed in Belgrade. Now a little 3-year-old is being bombed in Belgrade in my name. Is this what it's all about? That confusion that you're talking about. Then I decided enough, and if you remember, our minister allowed me to say a few words because I was out of my mind, and she gave me 10 minutes to talk. And Chuck's wife, Anne, told me, Galina, you were so emotional. And I'm thinking, yeah, most of you probably don't know where Belgrade is. Yeah, I'm emotional. And so this is where this comes from, my saying, it's very nice to be a middle-class American, to have a nice, comfortable life. But why on earth are we bombing out there? What's going on? And so then I read 25 books just in Yugoslavia, because I'm only 6 years old when we left. And then there were a lot of immigrants from the 90s, and I would run, they would call at the U of A, and I would run out and go and interpret, because this guy's in the hospital and I can't talk to him, blah, blah, blah. So that's how step by step, and it just so happened that my family was involved with all the major political, historical events of the 20th century. The Russian Revolution, World War I, World War II, colonization and decolonization. Now, Morocco was not in a terrible turmoil, but Algeria, right next door, had a horrible civil war because the French had been there for 150 years. And there were several generations of French that said, wait a minute, this is my home, you know? What do you mean you want me vamoose out of here? So you have colonization and decolonization, and then being a dumb immigrant, which was an interesting experience in Australia. They would just speak louder because they think then, you know, I wouldn't understand, you know, and so on. So I had kind of repressed that and had a normal life, but then I decided enough already. I really want to dig in and go back and so on. And so that's like how, and I started the end and go back to the beginning as a way, a gradual way to acquaint myself. What do I know about Yugoslavia? Nothing except the headlines. But I know it in my gut that I can't trust the headlines. I know it in my gut that the headlines are a little bit too, you know. I read a part of all the reading. I read President Biden's, at that time, he wrote an autobiography. And there's a passage there where he says he's Catholic, and there was a Catholic priest from Croatia who was his source of information about Yugoslavia. Now, this is a very, very one-sided idea. Croatia, I mean, that was the part of Yugoslavia that welcomed the Germans and locked up, you know, Jews and gypsies and Orthodox Serbs into concentration camps. And that was Joe Biden's source of information about Yugoslavia. So I just kept searching. So I got a very long answer, but trying to tell you, it was confusing for me too, because I experienced this as a child. Then I had to go back and I had to add adult reflection and understanding and looking at books and trying to do that. And then in the meantime, in the 80s, there was the nuclear arms race. And I'm fluent in Russian, so I decided, okay. So I went with the Quakers, went with the Unitarian Universalist United Nations office. They hired me. They actually paid me. I didn't have to pay the thing to be the interpreter and give little lectures sometimes. So I kept trying to understand. I'm sorry, I'm going on and on.
No,
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
How is this, the earthquake in Morocco, I thought of you.
Oh,
I mean, do you remember places you're seeing
are
pictures
you
of that are?
kidding? My son
Yeah.
sent me a map, and there's a little spot there that says what is that? The little mining town where we lived was 40 kilometers. That's like 30 miles north of that. And in Marrakesh, I saw pictures. My boarding house was not far from where that happened. So yeah.
Oh,
It's in the Atlas Mountains too. You see that you can.
That's how I learned to drive, crossing the Atlas.
oh gosh. You can drive anywhere.
So,
Yeah, it's a little rough. I mean, I thought Italy was bad, but Morocco was worse.
when were you in Morocco?
Probably 10 to 15 years ago.
Where did you
we
go?
drove all over.
Where did you go all over?
Well, we took the boat across from,
Gibraltar?
and,
Arrived in Tangiers.
right. And then Tangiers, it like everybody was trying to grab onto you, to sell you something or to get money from you or whatever. And one of the guys in Tangiers said, "Oh, you're taking the 12 o'clock, the midnight train." And we said, yes, we had no, because Bill and I traveled a lot and just winged it, over the years. And so, we
got on the midnight train and then we rented a car and, you know, you know, in Marrakesh, you know, we went with the local into the mountains. He bought groceries and cooked for us, took us to a family, you know, and I'm looking at the results of the earthquake and I'm thinking, oh my God,
I
these are
was there,
places
I
we
was
walk. Yeah.
Well, about people wanting you to, you know, to buy things. I don't know if any of you remember the passage there. I went back to Morocco in 76. I left in 58. The first time Rick had a business trip to Morocco, so I think I came along. And we were in Marrakesh and we're staying in this fancy hotel that I could only look at from the outside. And so, of course, we're tourists, so they send us a guide, and I go, out of the question. I don't need a self-important guide where I used to jump on my bicycle. And those cities are not as divided as they used to be. You have the European section and you have a sort of medieval Moroccan section behind walls. And some of my friends lived in the European section. Some of my friends actually lived in the Moroccan section. So, and I was in boarding school, and on weekends they would invite me. I would jump on my bike and I would go right into the Moroccan section, and I would go between donkeys and whatever else, you know. I was at home there. So now I'm a fancy American tourist, and they want me to, and I go, no way, no, I do not need a guide. And so we go to the main square, Jemaif now, where you have mountebanks. Oh, they were when the French left Morocco, and the young generation wanted to raise it. And then some smart people say, are you kidding? This is the biggest attraction in Marrakesh. Medieval, you know, Morocco. Okay. So they have mountebanks, you have snake charmers, you have storytellers, you know. And so I want to show Rick Jemaif now.
How about the dentist?
Huh?
How about the dentist at the market? The
what?
dentist.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Arachel the dump, the one that pulls your teeth, yeah. And so I, you know, go there. And what happened, something that was not the case when I lived there. A bunch of kids start, you know, grabbing and pushing Rick, and so he goes, I told you so. And I then start to see Morocco, you have classical Arabic, you have street Arabic, and then you have Berber behind the other one. And I knew a mixture of the three. And I just, so I come up and I tell them, means get lost, you all. And to the kids. And then this young guy who's standing goes, she knows the curses, my mountain. And he became my bodyguard. And every once in a while he would whack me on the back and go, and he took us around for the rest of the day. And the punchline is he would not take any money.
Wow, he enjoyed it so much.
I don't know if he enjoyed it, but it was like honor bound. No,
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We're being friends, but not,
Yeah.
you know, he's not just being a servant or so anyway, you made me recall that because Jemaif, now you've been there.
I read Galina's book in galley form many years ago. How many years ago was that?
Well, it was, I don't know, about a long time ago, and it was published in the spring of 21, so it's beginning to count.
Anyway, I want to read it again. And, you know, I feel so grateful to you, you know, because as an American, you know, we're really naive you know, I still feel today there's so much to learn. John tried to teach me forever because I've known John for a lot of years.
A long time.
And, you know, the experiences you had are, you know, are different from anybody's. And then, you know, I met Gloria, and Gloria talked about Czechoslovakia, and, you know, like, we went to Czechoslovakia more recent, probably 5 years ago. And I had read Ricardo's, you know, family history in Czechoslovakia. And, you know, I feel like I'm still learning. You know, and I have a son that's fluent in Russian, and we traveled in Russia. So even the years that we did travel in Russia, you know, I kept thinking about, you know, how much there is to learn, you know, and recalling things that I read in your book. And I really look forward to reading it again.
Well, it's sweet.
But the problem is, you know, in our lifetime, it's not going to happen. And I hope for our grandchildren that they learn more about, in a balanced way, about colonialism and how we're still suffering. People in poor countries are still suffering today as a result of it.
Well, you know, I wrote the article about Ukraine because I still have family members on both sides. They're probably killing each other as we speak. So it's very close, just like the bombing of Belgrade was like right here. Same with the war in Ukraine. But my approach, because I mean, after all, I was teaching the language and history and culture, right, of the regions. Oh, I know about it. I feel I have to apologize. I'm so sorry. I just happen to know the history, because what we are told in the media is outrageous lies. And I wrote an article and I sent to WILPF, and then not responding. It's been like, you know, it's too, you know, what I'm trying to say is the exotic stuff in my story is going on as we speak. As we speak. And you know, it's hard to open up to people, you know.
Especially where we live.
The forum, it's a lot of military families and so on, and so very respectable people. And John, as you know, is not very respectable.
Could I clarify something about WILPF, Galina? Yeah, the woman who edits the newsletter has been either let go or she quit. I don't know. So they're in between editors.
Oh,
So that may be a factor about why you haven't heard from them.
okay, from her. Okay. Thank you. I'll try again.
Well, that makes me think, and sort of part of what I was asking initially. What is your sense of hope, if there is any? Because I was impressed with the literary comments that you put into your memoir. Most of those books I have not read, but I found that interesting as a writer to interweave that characters in books and to relate it to whatever was happening at that time, whatever your thoughts were. But we're all seniors here. I'm advanced senior. You mentioned about grandchildren. I have great-great-grandchildren, very young. But I have lost the sense of and I'm upset with myself. And after reading your book, you know, my thought was, do you have any hope at this point that anything can what can we as humans do, and social activists to make things better? And, not necessarily undo the past, we can't undo, but to look at things differently, like when you mentioned about Biden and he just had one opinion or advisement about one side, and I gather that it was not a very healthy side, not listening to maybe the opposite side or counter side. And so, do you have any hope at this point in your life that things can be better, that there is hope?
Well, one way that I can contribute still while my mind is halfway there, is that you have to know history in order not to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. That's why I try to share my experience, say, I'm one of you. I'm just a Unitarian Universalist. I'm just, one of you. And look, just I want to share with you, but so let's try to understand what goes on in Ukraine or whatever, That's all I can do at my age. And also one of my hopeful things is I started out very conservative. My mom and dad were elite in Russia. Of course, they were not for the communist revolution. Of course not. They were going to lose everything. And I did lose everything. And we were dirt poor, and I almost died in the forced labor camp, so on. So when I started working on this, I figured, and also being in the US, and we are the shining city on the hill, and they are the evil empire. And even though they've converted, Putin is the devil incarnate. So I said, wait a minute. My ancestry is Russian and Ukrainian. Do I have horns? Do I, what else can I do? But then I thought I have to learn more from the other side. And I went to a little local group called the Marxist Study Group. You've been there, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I figured I need to learn, like Marx. I mean, after all, he's a philosopher of the 19th century. Is it like so taboo to read Marx? Yes, it is taboo. Okay, I'm gonna cross that line. I go there, and all these people go, revolution. And there's this gentleman here who actually read Marx, read what's his name? Engels,
Trotsky.
read Lenin, read Trotsky, and he says, wait a minute. And he has this impressive way to put complicated things in a coherent way. So I was impressed. So then when they gave us assignments to read for the Marxist study group, I turned to him and I go, what, the article is like, so much so then I said, I'm writing this memoir. I would like your feedback on my understanding of the revolution. I've read, but I suspect I've probably read one-sided things. So he says, okay. And I go, oh my God, there's all the personal stuff, right? I don't care if people out there in La La Land, I tell them the stuff that I had, the troubles with my marriage and everything, my son's illness, all of that, but not somebody I don't really know. Anyway, he was very sweet. He says, like you said, he says, your style is scintillating. and that, when Rick passed away, his wife passed away a year before my husband died. Little by little, we decided to hook up. But going to what's the hope? he has been an activist all his life. He was he says not the union organizer because unions are for sale, but he was a, what do you call it? Rank and file.
Rank and file.
Rank and file organizer. He worked with Cesar Chavez, with the, what do you call them? The farm workers, you know, and so he's put his whole life in living his beliefs, right? You know him, you know. And then he says it was a waste. Isn't that terrible? Oh, isn't that terrible?
Why do you say that, John? Why do you say it was a waste? To work with
Well,
farmers?
No, that was a good experience. A truncated experience. But nonetheless, a good experience. And I looked over the whole of my life. I thought it was waste.
Because he tried so hard and didn't have too many successes, you know?
The United Farm Workers had some success, don't you think? I mean, it certainly
Not
made,
really,
well,
not really.
made some people aware, but maybe it was just those of us who paid attention.
They had a span of time. But now look at the farm workers, what's left? Not much.
Anyway, I hate to be negative, but I am still trying. Like I say, by doing this, so I say, hey, you know, my dad was Russian. He was a wonderful guy, conservative, religious, all of that. I grew away from that. But at least, you know, I can talk and change is possible. This is what I'm trying. That's the hopeful. I think change is possible, but you have to work at it.
Galina, can I go back to what you said about your article that you sent to Will? Are you talking about National Will?
Yeah.
Okay. Because, yeah, I haven't seen that, or I don't know what that article is you're referring to.
They didn't respond. And then I went back after a month and I said, maybe it was in spam. I'll look at it. Then she read it and she says, I'll submit it to the board. That's like 3 months ago, you know, so. But Gloria is saying that they're in between editors maybe, so.
That is correct. They don't have an editor at the moment, and that's been for a month or two, I think.
Well, that explains it, so
Yeah.
thank you for it.
Well, our branch could work on this. Can't we alert the national about that? Because you're in a branch, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm a branch, as far as I know, I'm signed up.
Yeah.
Well, that
Well,
may,
they'll have a new editor soon, and then you can, I'll let you know, Galina, when if you don't see it in some publication, I'll let you know when they get a new editor.
Say that again.
I'll let you know when they get the new editor.
Oh, okay, thank you.
yeah, that leads me to ask, how widely distributed is your book now? Do you have any idea? Because the Northwest UU congregation, one of the leaders of a book discussion group, there are two there. One is very scientific. They would not be interested in reading your book. Well, I shouldn't say interested in reading, but for a discussion that we have monthly.
How do you know they wouldn't be interested?
Oh, well, that's my opinion, is that
Ask them.
what you said initially about men find it too personal or something, and women don't like the history or whatever. This group, the particular group that I participate in, the reading group, are very scientific, and I knowing them like I do and having been a part of that group, it's not the nature of that group, the way they think that they would deal with this, a memoir. Because they would probably think of it as not fiction, because it's not fiction, but personal. So, and they're mostly men, highly educated men as well. But anyway, but there's a second reading group that they deal with ordinary literature. And one of the main leaders of that group has your book. It's going to read it.
Oh,
And I don't know how
thank
many
you.
members they have, but
Thank
anyway, she told me she's gonna read it and I told her my feelings about the book. And she said, I think our group will discuss it and buy it. So do you have any idea what the distribution is? I maybe that's not the word.
Well, the publisher is a young man who has followed his Polish girlfriend to Poland. He's an amazing young man who has taught himself Russian on the internet. He was in the same private school that my granddaughters were. How old is Jake now? He's not even
He's-
30.
Yeah,
So he went
when
and
I
got,
met him when he was 16.
he got his BA in Holland, and he's finishing his PhD dissertation in philosophy in Poland. And he has published a number of all kinds of esoteric books, but he hasn't had much time to promote it. By the way, I've applied to the Tucson Book Fair. I've applied to see if they'll accept it.
Oh, I didn't know.
So, you know, so I don't know how many books were sold. I never asked Jay, but I don't know, I have no idea. Maybe a couple of hundred, that's all.
Our book group is, at church is reading it for December.
Oh,
So, but I don't
really?
know, that was just settled at our last meeting, so.
Well,
I told them
thank you,
to
ladies.
get in touch with Antigone's to have them get some copies in.
Forget about Antigone.
Oh, really?
Forget
Oh.
about Antigone.
Then how will they get it?
Well, it's, there's the link,
The publisher.
the publisher, he'll send it to you.
And it's less expensive.
It's less, well, no, actually, Antigone doesn't charge. I don't understand. It was very confusing to me. They said, I have to get it, and then.
What about the other?
Gloria? Debbie.
That was Debbie.
Oh, Debbie. Hi, Debbie.
That was Debbie.
We lost her.
We lost. We can't see you.
What did you say, Debbie?
But about, definitely,
Can you hear me?
Debbie,
Oh.
you can type it in
About
the chat.
Store called the book stop. Okay.
Type it in chat, and one of us that has a good connection can repeat your question.
Book stop, she said, that one.
Yeah, I got that much. I think that's what it was.
Oh, yeah, maybe they would.
what did she say?
Book stop is that little independent bookstore that's on Speedway.
Fourth Avenue.
Oh, I thought she was talking about the one that's next to.
There's- Isn't there one called Mostly Books
Is-
on East Speedway? Mostly Books? That's another independent.
I'll tell you
Oh.
what I paid. I went to a bookman and I bought a dozen books. And I've given some away, and when somebody was kind enough to pay for it, I paid a book. So is that what Antigone wants me to do? How, or did they want me to order it from the publisher and bring it to them? You know,
If they
I'm
would,
old and tired. I don't have to do that.
but it would be great if you could present at the book festival. Can we, is there anybody that we can, like just our group, if each one of us would contact somebody and say, we read the book and had a discussion with you and they really have to bring, you know, then maybe they'd listen.
Well, you can get it from Amazon.
Well, no, I'm talking about just getting them to
Just
have
get
you
it and
come to the book festival and
Barnes
be a
and Noble.
presenter at the book festival.
Well, yeah, but if they wanna buy the book,
Yeah,
oh,
then
at
you'd
the
have-
book festival, I guess I will have books.
You'd have to have a
to
bunch of
start.
books, yeah, yeah,
I'll find out how to do that.
yeah, yeah.
What were you gonna say, John?
You were going to say something?
no,
Okay.
When you were mentioning earlier about, all the turmoil and all that you write about in your book, in all these countries, and that's been going on forever. We know, and will continue.
US has been at war 96% of the
Sure,
time
yeah.
I've read.
And so it's hard to be optimistic, but there's the one thing that's different today is the ability to communicate in an instant with anybody around the world. Could that make things worse, or could it make things better? Is there hope because of that? It could make things worse, but it's a different thing that we haven't had in all these years.
I agree. I think it's remarkable, and the Zoom thing and everything. However, of course, the powers that be try to control it. There's like, we listen a lot to a guy called Scott Ritter. I don't know if you know who that is. He's very good on Ukraine, and he got canceled from
YouTube,
YouTube, so there's a lot of censorship.
Scott Ritter.
Sorry,
Scott Ritter.
you know who Scott Ritter is? Tell them.
Well, I just know that he's very outspoken, very knowledgeable. And doesn't necessarily follow the party line.
That's right. And he is the one who told everybody he was the inspector for weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And he was the lone voice saying there are no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And he was vilified. He was called a pedophile.
That's right.
And he's the one who was, I forget the IMF treaty, I think it was. And he was one of the American team that was sent to the Soviet Union, I think in 87 or something. And then there was a group of Soviet inspectors sent to probably Los Alamos, wherever. And there was and he was there for 2 years, making sure that the Soviets did their part of the treaty. So it's very there are people just like us. Whoopie-doo, there are people just like us. And he is very good on Ukraine, very good on what's going on.
Scott Ritter.
Yeah.
Right, RITTER.
yes.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
You know, it would be good if Galina were a little closer to the mic. We can hear her, but she's a bit far.
Who are you talking?
Gloria.
Let me see if I don't know if this makes a difference, but let's try.
But
It does. It does make a difference.
It's supposed to have,
It
doesn't-
inside the, oh, but got it.
it's supposed to have a round sound or whatever.
That's what you mean, those amazing gadgets. It's
There.
oh,
Yeah.
But it doesn't help
It's
the
unity.
people in the room hear the people on the computer.
Oh,
We hear
It
you.
sounds better, a little bit better, yeah.
And Emily wants to speak.
well, okay. I'm feeling a little more hopeful from the last words that have been said, but I don't know if this is gonna throw, what do they call it, wet blanket and things, but what about all of this stuff about AI. I'm really concerned, like you're talking about, talk to the other side, read, learn history and all that. But now we got this, I don't know, thing AI that's coming up and all the controversy about that. Personally, I don't like the concept at all. And I wish that the world was not heading to that can falsify, that identify, how you speak, how you look, and that's scary to me. So despite all of the beautiful technology that I've lived through and see today is wonderful, but now this AI, does anybody else have any feelings?
May I speak to that?
What?
May I speak to that? I have plenty of thoughts about that.
Sure, go
Because
ahead.
first of all, we don't have AI, Emily. I think we've discussed this before. What we have is machine learning.
Yeah.
AI would be a totally independent entity that can overrule any programming. We don't have that. So that's the first thing that's wrong with this scare. That's a buzzword, AI. And the minute you get into buzzwords, the way our brains are configured is it bypasses your temporal lobe and it goes right to the amygdala, the fear, fight, or flight lobe. So the media will use buzzwords. They will use things like AI or, COVID, whatever, commies, fascists. These are all buzzwords. You need to get real information from people who program, not from newspaper commentators who are usually scientifically illiterate, Emily.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
I understand that, but my concern is that there's so much emphasis now and talk about AI.
Well, that's the media. The media is generating that just as it is giving you a one-sided picture on Ukraine. I would use Ukraine as a simile. You get one side on Ukraine. They're not going to say much about, the nuances of this machine learning, and it isn't really AI.
But the machine learning can be scary.
The machine learning, anything can be scary. I mean, people were afraid of telephones and thought they would, go down their throats or something and pull out their guts. I don't know. So AI is going to eat your grandma's knickers. We're going to have several panels at the Tucson Science Fiction Convention in November about so-called, I call it so-called AI.
We need to take.
Because everything, when you lump everything under this misleading misnomer of AI, I guess I can be on video because I'm talking. So if I can get my video to start, doesn't start. Okay. Because when you do AI and call everything, these little pizza delivery things that are on campus, people are calling AI because they have two headlights that look like eyes. And Emily was on campus with me and she saw them rolling around. They no more are AI than your toaster.
Okay,
So,
Gloria, I have a
that's
question.
enough on that.
Gloria, I have a question.
Sure, if I could see you, okay.
Okay. I have a friend who is Russian. She, John, be careful. Okay. So, anyway, a long story short, her son came here in the 90s and he's very successful, and she retired. So now she's the snowbird. She comes here in winter, goes back to Moscow in the summer. So she doesn't know any English. So she's been here doing this for a few years. So I stepped up and I take her shopping, I take her to doctors and so on. So here we are, she needs to go to the dentist. So I'm driving her to the dentist. And of course we speak Russian, right? And that was during COVID. So I drop her off, I'm not allowed to go in. So she goes in and I'm sitting in the car and I take my phone and I thought and all of a sudden everything on my phone comes up in Russian. So what is that?
That is something that could be from many different causes, and I wouldn't even attempt to answer it. I don't know.
Do you have Google Translate or any of those on your phone?
But you read Russian, right?
Yeah, yeah, but how come the phone could hear that I spoke Russian with my friend? And then I turn on the phone to do the usual thing, and everything appears in Russian.
It might be due to what you were doing, but your phone was turned off, so it might be also that you had hit a button and translated something earlier. I don't know.
But it couldn't do that unless you have one of the programs that translate.
Yeah, Google Translate.
Yeah.
I do have Google Translate,
It's fabulous.
which I use for German. I am meeting with friends and to practice my German. And there's only one native speaker, so some of us, keep trying, but so we go to the phone, we're not sure, and sure enough, there's German.
Instant translation. It's
Yeah.
fabulous.
Yeah, yeah. But the fact that, yeah,
Well, just to get us back to your life experiences and the book. What, as you look back on your life, what is it that do you think contributes to you being so resilient and hopeful, both in terms of your personal life and also we were talking a little bit about just history. Because not all people have that capability, and perhaps we can learn what is it that you attribute your resiliency and hope to?
well, that's kind of funny. When John read my memoir, he said, "You had an idyllic childhood." I go, "Dur." I had an idyllic childhood. And what he said, "You had amazing parents." He had a very mean father who beat him, beat his brother, and beat his mom. He had a very painful childhood. And my parents, of course, as a teenager, I didn't know that. But later on, I realized.
Right.
My dad was very kind, calm. No matter hell or high water, he was steady and kind. And like that. And then my mom was the go-getter. No matter what, like I'm having issues with my granddaughter going back to school. She's shy, blah, blah, blah. She's very bright. She has no idea. I had to learn to go through school. I mean, I was in sixth. Okay, here I'm in this displaced person camp, and I haven't gone to school until age 9. No problem. Okay, we're in this camp, and you have Russians, Ukrainians, Poles. At least this is a Slavic, group of tongues. Then you have, Estonians, Latvians, and Lithuanians. These are Baltic. It's a totally different linguistic group. We all get along, kids play, we're just fine. And then finally they decide to create a school. So my mom goes to check at the school. She comes back and she says, "You're not gonna learn anything there. You go out into the German village to the German school." All my friends are here. You go, maybe German, pick it up. Pick it up. Not only that, but there's a gatekeeper, American soldiers, African American. I had never seen an African American. And this guy is a giant. And I'm terrified. And my mom says, "You have to go through there." And I approach and he goes, "Your pass?" And I go, and he goes and gives me a chocolate bar.
Oh,
Right, yeah,
this was when you were about 9?
that's in your book.
Yeah. And so I go to the German school, and believe it or not, I make it into the 6th grade, the exam from 5th grade I pass, I'm into 6th grade. We moved to Morocco. It took me 2 years to get into 6th grade. And my mom said, you know, Galina, you can see how we live. There's nothing we can do for you. If you go to school and you can do it, oh gosh, there'll be options in your life. That's who my mother was.
She gave you both.
Where was she
She
born?
made me do things that I didn't want to do.
Where was she born?
She was born in Ukraine. But we spoke Russian at home. Most Ukrainians, educated ones speak.
But I think that's still true, you know, from the very beginning, when we saw things on TV about Ukraine, I thought that people there looked like people in the US.
Yes, they do. That's why the Germans stole a lot of Ukrainian kids because they were blonde and blue. They were so surprised. Those Untermenschen, those subhumans, look just like Germans.
I think my feeling is when I read the book, I was feeling, oh my goodness, this woman, you. You had such an incredible closeness to your mother, the alignment. Wow, she really, she had no fear. But, you know, she did not instill in you, you know, anything that you should be afraid of. That she just said, it's up to you, and gave you so much courage. Well, she let you. It was your choice. You didn't have to do all these things.
Oh, yes. Are you
You
kidding?
had to do it.
It never, well, I had to go to the German village. I didn't want to. I want to stay and
Oh.
fool around with my friend. And
Oh.
she says, off you go.
Okay.
And what am I going to? I'm 9 years old. And so I go and I meet this strange looking giant. And then we become fast friends.
Could I say something? I'm promising Deb I will say what she can't say. Evidently, she's still having trouble. She said, here's what she wants to tell you, Galina, that if you have an iPhone, unless you change the setting, even if it's turned off, it can hear you. But you can change the setting. So get somebody like one of your grandkids that's computer literate and have them change the setting so that it doesn't hear you when it's turned off.
Thank you. I will ask them. My oldest granddaughter has this very cute boyfriend. I'm sure he can do it.
Yeah, I'm sure one of them can do it. Can I say another fast thing? I have me on the screen. I didn't turn me off. Can you see this? I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going in there. It's hard to do it in the right direction.
Dear
Peter
me.
Ustinov.
Oh, yeah.
He's one of my favorite actors, and he has a fantastic also memoir called Dear Me by Peter Ustinov, we say, but Ustinov. His family were all over the place too, and your memoir in some ways reminds me of him. Are you related to him by any chance?
No, 2 million Russians left in 1920. 2 million all over the world. The joke was you walk down in darkest Africa and all you have to say, hey, Russian, show up, and there'll be one showing up.
Yeah, but you know the actor then, Ustinov.
Of course.
I mean, he was related to that general. There's a famous, for the Americans here, there's a famous historic general, and I'm sure you know who I mean, Galina, General Ustinov.
No, I don't.
You don't? Well, he was a famous general. I don't know if it was in the Battle of Napoleon or what, but way
okay.
back.
Okay.
Oh, and his mother's family were all from the upper classes, and they mingled. They ended up in Paris, and Benoit is their name, Venoit.
Benoit, sure.
Yeah, so he's related. That evidently that sounds French, but it's another big Russian family.
Well, in Little Marrakesh, right, in the boondocks, one of the family that took me in on on weekends, their grandfather was a general, and there's a whole story. I go into it in the memoir also because it's so weird. It was a big cause celebre in France because he was like the head of the Russian emigre in Paris, and he was kidnapped by the Soviets
Mm.
And it was all over the paper. That's why they moved to Morocco, because it was, they wanted peace and quiet. They didn't want to be in the midst of, how come he was, anyway, he was kidnapped. Later on, they found out that he had been executed for being a white, in other words, counter-revolutionary general. In Marrakesh, he had a general's, his son and the granddaughters were my close friends. And, and their mother said how she joined the counter-revolution, the white coming out of her window. She had tied sheets together and escaped and joined the just like my dad, well, he didn't have to fight. But she
Could I interject a bit? I didn't mean to cut off your last word there, but Jane Addams visited Leo Tolstoy's house in Russia. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yes.
I didn't get to do it. I should have during
And one of the problems with this cross-cultural is that she wanted to follow his, his philosophy. And maybe you can explain that better than I can, but he was an aristocrat who wanted to dirty his hands and work in the farm. And he dressed like a peasant with bare feet and everything. So Jane Addams came to visit him, and she had those big puffy sleeves that women wore, at the end of the 19th century. Tolstoy said a child could have a dress from that useless amount of material you have in your puffy sleeves. So they got off to kind of a bad start. And she never did most of her career work in Hull House. He wanted her to get down and scrub the floors with the rest of them or make bread. But I think finally near the end of her life, she did make some bread in the kitchen.
Well, if it hadn't been for his wife, she was the one, can you imagine? She copied War and Peace 3 times, they didn't have any computers. And each time he changed it, she had to do it. She also bore him about a dozen kids, and she also made sure that he got published and everything. She was an amazing woman. So I don't know that anyway, interesting thing about Unitarians here. Leo Tolstoy was very impressed by Adam Ballou and the peaceniks of the Unitarians. He was in correspondence that inspired some of his peace work. And then Gandhi, who was in Africa, read one of Leo Tolstoy's book, The Kingdom of God is Within You. And that's what caused Gandhi to go back to India and do what he did. And then Martin Luther King Jr. was acquainted with Gandhi's work. So I actually did a lay presentation saying what goes around comes around.
Yes.
That's
Isn't
true.
it amazing?
Yes.
So you see, it's possible. It's possible to communicate to
Well, these global communications are so important. And I think part of the reasons that attitudes get so hardened and we get hardening of the categories, which aid the war makers, is not seeing people, actual people. I put it up in chat, but I know you can't see it. It's called Baklikov Live, BAKLYKOV Live. Just type in Baklikov Live on YouTube, and it's a very good way to see Russia, the cities, the countryside. This guy was doing his little walking tours long before the Ukrainian war. His name is Sergei, I think, Baklikov. And you just go on YouTube, you type in Baklikov Live. He's a native of St. Petersburg, and he returns there all the time. But he goes not only to Moscow and nearby places, he goes all across Russia. He saves his money. And on his vacations, he's a street worker, some kind of street worker in St. Petersburg. And there's no, very minimal politics. It's just visiting places. His family live in Ufa. Do you know where Ufa is?
Where? Ufa.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I've been to Ufa a couple times with him. So, he'll show you the parks. He'll show you the restaurants. I don't think he only shows the nicer parts. I think you get kind of but anyway, you just type in Baklikov Live. And when you get a real dose of hatred someday against Russians, type in Baklikov live and go, you know, go visit these towns with this guy. He's just a good-natured fellow.
Well, John and I, it's already 3 years ago, is it? We did the Trans-Siberian. And John says, a lot of trees, a lot of trees. Now, my friend Nancy and her companion were going to come, and he got sick, but she came with us. So we had an open bunk in our little compartment. And so every few steps, a Russian guy would come and occupy the bunk up there. And he would come in and he would hear us speak English. So he'd go like this. I said, that's okay, you're welcome. Oh, you speak Russian. And so every few stations, there was a new guide. So for John, as a tourist, a lot of trees. For me, I talked to a whole bunch of people. And the Trans-Siberian, as you can know, is not a short trip. So I talked to all these different, and one of them insisted that I play a game of chess with him. And I said, I haven't played chess in years. Oh, let's play chess. And of course, he beat me twice, and he was wet. That made his
But I do think that, you know, this seeing people, I know you travel, but I'm trying to make the point, spread the word that this is a good show for Americans, because we're getting no exposure to seeing Russians. We're not seeing any Russians. Unless they're, you know, spokesmen or warmongers or, you know, they're soldiers shooting poor little Ukrainian children, whatever. We're not seeing regular Russians. And that's a key thing, you know, to just see them living regular daily life.
I'm glad that this is like a regular Russian, because my friend Anya is somebody else that I met, and she had issues with food stamps, blah, blah, blah. That's on still at the U of A. And I was running around, you know, interpreting for people. And she listens to Russian programs, and she is a fanatic anti-Putin. And she said, if I were ever close to Putin, I would scratch out his eyes. So I go, okay, Anya. So tell me, and she says, this is what you need to listen to. This is what you, all in Russian. She listens to it all day long. So I said, okay. So this guy, you see, is so eloquent, so articulate. I said, okay, what's his platform? What's his lip? Washington, D.C. He's a Russian emigre who fits into the American system very nicely and propagates in the best articulate Russian. So I said, well, doesn't that make you feel a little cautious about he is in the Washington, D.C., and he convinces you so well? Don't you ask yourself questions? And then she says, well, what about this other guy? What's his platform? Berlin. So there are Russian sources that, like my friend Anya, just buys wholesale. You know, you just have to do your homework, so to speak. But the one you're talking about, Gloria, seems like he's like a regular guy.
Yeah, he, you know, they have walking tours now on YouTube of places in Germany. People will go, there are people who want to do that, you know, show the world what my country looks like. You get them, there are French ones doing it, you know, Italians, Germans. He's just a Russian one. And he was doing it long before, I think he started like in 2011. So he isn't somebody who cropped up as a Putin paid stooge or anything. He's just been doing this. And he's kind of funny, he's cute, you know, he's a kind of a round-faced guy, kind of big and burly. And his English is pretty good, and he makes jokes, but a lot of it is just small talk, you know. And Bob's only complaint is, I wish he'd do more homework when he'd show some of the buildings he knows a lot about, some of them not so much, but that shows he's not really primed, he's not fake, you know. And he loves to show things. His wife comes on, his little girl occasionally. So I think very highly of it. Of course, there'll always be some real Russia hater who'll say, oh, Baklikov, he doesn't show you everything, but it's, you can make your own judgment. I don't think there's anybody else doing it every day. He does it every day.
Actually, my friend, Clara, she got stuck here with COVID. And now it kind of messed her up coming here she's coming back hopefully in October. But I will call from time to time. She doesn't want to talk about anything. She doesn't, so she said, come on over, Galina, come on over. When we went, we spent 10 days in Moscow in her place. And, it's a tiny apartment. And she says, I invited you, but I'm having second thoughts because it's such a small place. I said, that's okay. She set up and opened up a bed in the kitchen. And we had like 2 beds in the bedroom, and she slept in the kitchen. I opened up a thing,
Caught.
a cot. So, and then she folded it up during the day, and then she would prepare everything. I mean, why wouldn't I want to go?
No, because, my David lived in Russia for 2.5 years. That's why we traveled 2 summers with him. And, his friends would say, people will think he's Russian if he lived here another year.
Mm-hmm.
And he will not go to Russia now because he said you could get arrested for doing nothing.
Well, see, your son went there in the 90s, right? That was the liberation, that was, so he's probably business oriented, right? And all of that, your son? Okay, so he buys the horrible Putin idea.
He never could stand Putin.
Well, there you go. You see, so he is connected to that way of thinking. I have read 2 biographies of Putin, one extremely negative by somebody called Masha Gessen, who is published in the New Yorker and elsewhere, fits within the American context perfectly. And another one by a Russian who had a connection in France, who is much more even-handed and not, with Masha Gessen, with that, Putin is the devil. Why is Putin the devil in it? Because he is not, like Clinton said, well, we're hoping that the next guy, meaning Putin, is going to be a sober Yeltsin. In other words, Yeltsin, who opens up the gates, allows the international business companies, monopolies, to go and absolutely buy out for a song and a dance all of the public, companies, oil, gas, and everything. And then Putin turned out, and Masha Gessen calls him street. Apparently, he grew up in a bad neighborhood in Leningrad, which became St. Petersburg. And he was short, as we know, and he had to defend himself against bigger boys. So here's this beady-eyed little street fighter who said, ooh, okay, I'm not going to be a sober Yeltsin. Actually, my country needs its resources for us. How dare he? How dare he? I mean, really. And so just like Gaddafi, just like Saddam Hussein, just like Milosevic, he is a villain because he stands up to us. That's my interpretation now, check it out, but that's my conclusion.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You said there are 2 bios of Putin. Marsha Gessen is the negative one about him. Who's the other writer?
I don't have it in my head, but I have the book. I can say.
And I know this is a very provocative question, but
I like
tell us something about Putin you don't think that we know.
You can find out about Putin, we can listen to what he says. Like, let me give you one example. I don't know if Gloria made this possible, but I'm in connection with this international women against NATO. I read in that in 2000, Putin came and spoke in the German parliament, and he said, this is, we're building connections where we have a lot of cultural thing. I mean, Catherine the Great was a German and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so Putin says, of course it makes sense for Russia and Germany. Germany is a high-tech country. Russia has been pushed back with all of the turmoil. It has all the resources. We should work together. We should, And the German parliament in 2000 gave him a standing ovation. So the best way, there is way to listen to Putin. John, you know how to, he knows, he finds all these sources. You listen to the guy, he sounds measured, he sounds intelligent, he sounds 10 times better than Biden in terms of having a sense of the world. But you see, the Soviet Union lost 27 million people during World War II. How much did the US lose? 300,000?
300, 250, according to
Well,
originally.
let's say it's 400, but compared to 27 million, it was overrun. They blockaded Leningrad. Close to 1 million people starved to death. The decimation of the land and the people was horrible. Now, I occasionally take a class at the U of A. What's it called? Anyway, for people outside the university. There was one on World War II. I figured, that's my topic. I'll take it. And they described the class, not one word about the participation of the Soviet Union in World War II. That's what
That's pretty much the consensus of mainstream news.
So what I'm trying to say is, I don't know where I was going with that, but there must have been that reason why that had to do with your question. To say good things, so pulling yourself up after being deaf, and the US really became the major power around the world after World War II.
Yeah, okay, well, and today, currently, what's your feeling or thoughts about Russia, China, and Africa? Trying to make
The Africans are
policies
all
aware.
for it.
what?
The Africans are mostly for it.
For what?
For the Chinese and for the Russians.
Basically, I mean, I lived in Africa. I was in a country that was under colonial power.
Northern.
Okay, but the French, you hear about the Sahel region, where you have a number of countries that now have had some coups, and Senegal and Belgium on the center, right? I read about that because my husband's family is Belgian. Okay, so they were under a portion under British colonial power, little pieces under German, and large pieces under the French. It still is the case. For example, power, what's the atomic power? You need
Nuclear power,
nuclear power, you need what? What's the thing that you need?
uranium.
Uranium. So Mali is a big source of uranium. So the French get uranium very, very cheaply. And to the West needs those resources, and the way they do it on the cheap, very much. And so,
They steal it,
so the Africans,
As cheap as you can
put
get.
it bluntly.
And kids are exposed,
huh?
and young kids working there are exposed.
Well, yeah, in all the mines, of course. So what I'm going with that is Africa has a long, long experience of British and French and somewhat German colonial. They know all about it. They know the IMF gives them a loan, then they have to pay back, and then they have to turn their country into austerity. So Africa doesn't have choice, but that. So now comes China and Russia. Somehow they did their thing in a different way. And I went to an international peace conference to Prague. I met a guy, I forget what country, in Central Africa. He spoke fluent Russian. He had gone to school to Russia. So he absorbed the other side, that yes, you can get these people off your back and so on. So now that's what's happening. China did it at a great cost to her people, but that's the way they did it. Same with Russia. So now apparently China is offering much better deal than the West ever did to Africa.
But about Russia, you know what I think is scary is that we Americans know so little about Russia not wanting NATO at the border.
Well, there was an agreement that NATO wouldn't expand.
Yes, there was.
And what happened to that agreement?
It was ignored.
It was ignored.
It wasn't in writing. There are many sources for the information.
So we're inching up and inching up. Why? And after 91, the Russians aren't the bloody commies anymore. The Soviet Union fell apart. So why do we still hate them?
Galina, well, I'm going to have to leave, because before I do, would you sign your book for me?
Oh,
Do you have a pen, Galina, or do you need a pen?
Yeah, I think there's a pin in there, isn't there?
Oh, she said there's one in there, but.
how do I spell your name? Say
K, K-A-Y,
K-I,
K-A-Y.
K-A-Y.
Thank you. Do you have yours signed, Emily?
Yeah, I got mine directly from her. I bought it from her. Yeah. I bought it directly from her.
Oh,
And she
I
signed
have
my
Lisa
book.
and Jeff's
all
book.
right.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much.
I have Lisa and Jeff's book,
Okay.
but I want you to sign mine too.
Gloria's gone from the Zoom. Oh, she left?
Well,
Oh, she's this.
She said she was gonna make me
Georgia.
co-host in
Georgia.
case she had.
Yeah, but she also had emailed me that she had to leave
Okay,
because she had another engagement.
so she,
Yeah,
okay,
that she wasn't gonna be here for the
yeah,
whole thing.
then she didn't lose the connection.
She didn't say
I just
goodbye.
noticed that she wasn't there. Margaret and Debbie were still there.
She mentioned a science fiction convention of some kind that seemed interesting. Do you remember that? When she,
Yeah, I remember she mentioned it.
Yeah.
Well, she's a science fiction.
yeah.
So my question to you is, as far as,
Thank
you
you so
can let
much.
yourself out by yourself, okay?
Thank you.
So the all the stuff that we're reading in the paper, and obviously we know that we don't always get straight stories, but I mean, the pictures of the atrocities now in Ukraine, the kids that have died, and supposedly all these kids that were kidnapped and taken to Russia. Speak to that.
I don't know if Gloria is still on, maybe not.
She's gone.
She's gone, okay. One, like the 25 books plus David Gibbs. Do you guys know David Gibbs? He talked at WILPF meetings, yeah. He wrote a book about Yugoslavia called First Do No Harm. He took 10 years to write it, to do the research. In his book and others, they say how they hired PR companies to take pictures of somebody who is emaciated behind a barbed wire, how so much is a quote unquote psyop, how it's, you know, they can write articles in the paper, but they can do the same thing. They can create videos that are utterly fakes. Now, in the major city, what's the city, John? Where they've gone back and forth. Anyway, it'll come to me. I had been watching this early on, and I saw a building that's been shelled and a school that was shelled. Now, you know that this was going on since 2014 to 2018, that the Kiev government, which we installed, was shelling the Donbas region. So I had been watching this and I see this building. Later, I'm watching, I recognize the same building. And now they claim that the Russians did it. So it is perfectly possible to create the visual horror stories that are fake. Now, listening to Putin and so on, they say the last thing we want to do is kill a lot of civilians, because then they'll have to deal with Ukraine on their border and their hatred and everything. So they did the military operation. They are big. They could have wiped Ukrainian into La La Land by now. They didn't do it because they're very cautious, and they kept saying they had the 1 Minsk agreement, they got together early on in Istanbul, in Turkey, and they talked about a peace agreement. And Johnson, Boris Johnson came and said, you can't do that. The Ukrainians were ready because they knew that the Russians are much bigger than them. Never mind that they've been trained and given all the things. And we didn't allow them to make an agreement. So, so it's horrible.
Are you in contact with anybody in Ukraine right now?
No, but I've met a woman who was in the Balalaika concert, and Mia, Mia Gay? Anyway, she created the Balalaika group the last 30 years. She has Russians, Ukrainian, she has some Poles also, Okay, so she had like a luncheon. She invited me, and she invited my friend Anya, who is such an anti-Putin, and she invited this woman who is Ukrainian, who only speaks Russian. Anyway, and she says, I changed my mind. Now I hate Russians. I didn't used to hate Russians. Now I hate Russians because there's a war going on, and a lot of Ukrainians get killed. I understand it's 1 Russian to 7 Ukrainians. And here they tell us, oh, the Ukrainians are winning. Anyway, so she's going to go back because she has family there. So I'm going to talk to her and hopefully meet with her when she comes back. Hopefully she makes it. And the Russians could have bombed Kiev into smithereens. They have. Because they don't want to start a war with NATO. Russians know all about war. They don't want, they have Napoleon, they have the Germans, they don't want, they don't need the war. They're struggling, they're having.
But there is a war going on.
Right.
Well, yeah. But how did it come about? We did regime change in Kiev.
We had the Minsk Accords, which we used as, this is from the mouth of Angela Merkel. We didn't believe in the Ukraine Accords, and we used it as an opportunity to arm the Ukrainians.
To train them, to arm them, etc.
That's another thing, we don't know anything. Gloria, first talked about the corruption in Ukraine 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one little thing, I was like,
There is corruption
Every place, exactly.
but I remember.
including the US.
Oh,
Well, the worst is here.
But we I have gone with the UUs, I've gone with the Quakers. Now in 95, I had a grant and the archives were open. I was going to do some research. And I went with a group of scholars and librarians. Long story short, I am, now it's called St. Petersburg. I'm talking to this librarian about my project. Okay, come out. And this woman, I can have it in here, a woman standing, an elderly woman, and she has a towel on the sidewalk, and she has her treasures. She has an ornate picture frame. She has a couple of silver spoons. She has like a few things. And I stop and I can tell she's trying to sell that, right? So I approach her and she starts speaking French because I don't look, look like a foreigner. I said, you don't have to speak French with me. You can do Russian. And we're talking in 95, okay? After we liberated the Soviets from the commies. So she starts saying, oh, she says, and she says, I can't afford to pay my, utility bills. She says, my daughter is a teacher in Ulyanovsk. And she and her husband have been on a hunger strike. They haven't been paid for 3 months. And she says, I have friends who were talked into by young entrepreneurs that they're going to help them. They had received the apartment. They owned it for nothing. They had been given the apartment, I don't know, 40 years ago, okay? And they said, anyway, they signed something trusting these young entrepreneurs, and they were out on the street. And this woman tells me this right on the street, okay? So just as a little vignette of what was going on in the 90s when we, finally made them see the light and the wonderful thing of free enterprise and capitalism.
One of the things I wonder about is when people are the victims of destruction, like in Ukraine right now, will those people ever succumb? Will, when you're forced into becoming a part of something that you don't want to be, are those people going to be a constant thorn in the side of Russia?
That is what Putin is worried about. That's why he is treating them, quote unquote, gently, because it's a large country. they're very connected historically and economically. And, you know, during the Maidan thing, it started out peacefully. Oh, I've read a couple of books about Maidan by a professor at Yale. Unbelievable propaganda, unbelievable. Of course, she doesn't know the languages, she's there and that. Anyway, so she said they wanted to be Western. They wanted to be Western. They didn't want to have anything to do with these Russian savages. And it's true that the young people wanted to listen to rock and roll and to wear jeans and to, you know, and all of that. It's true. It's true. That's probably what your son experienced. They were excited about free enterprise and this and that. But then there was a small group, very right wing. I mean, they're wearing swastikas on their clothes. And they're the ones in charge. And the Kolomoisky, I mean, Zelensky ran on the peace platform in 2019. He ran on the peace platform. He was elected by the majority. Of course, most people want peace. And then he was captured by this group that we installed, Victoria Nuland and all that. And
$5 billion
yeah,
preparing the ground.
it cost us, the US, $5 billion to create the Maidan thing. Why? Because BlackRock and because they want the business. That Biden probably and his son probably. What's Hunter Biden doing at the head of a company in Ukraine? What?
Making money.
Well,
The thing is, Susan, you know, that when, if we could learn a lesson from things like that, people affiliated with the president should not be allowed. I mean, you know, I just, you know, don't understand how comes through so much of the history of the United States that this has been acceptable.
well, it's all free enterprise. We know.
We are isolated with G7, which comprises NATO basically.
Right.
And we're isolated because people are waking up and have been fighting a long, long time in order to free themselves. And Russia and China comes along, and no doubt we have an argument. I'm given up on this country, and Galina hasn't. And we are confronted with very loudspeakers, mainstream media, television, and we
It's sad.
don't have a real great chance against that. We can get together in small groups, even thousands.
Gloria, you know. It's Gloria, yeah.
Emily?
Gloria?
Yeah.
What does she
Yeah.
want? Can you share what she wants?
I don't know, I just said it. I can't talk.
Well, you know, you were mentioning about the children being killed and captured and whatever they're doing, brainwashing and all that.
The children were taken out of the war zone and put into safety across the border in Russia. That's what happened.
Well, what puzzled me, you know, all that's been mentioned so far is the destruction. And my thought is tearing down, destroying I will see the things on television. And all I can do is accept what I see on television because I don't have the kind of experiences and connections that you have. And it just breaks my heart. And I say to myself, well, and you were talking about people, you know, how in future, what they're, as I interpret what you said, how they feel and how the world deals with them, and especially, you know, Russia, the United States, and all the money that we're pouring in, and Zelensky, you know, asking for more and more and more. And I said, who is going to rebuild? Who is going to help these lives? Not just children, but people. So, and you say, and I think what I heard you say is Putin is dealing gently with Ukrainians. And I say, well, what's gentle about killing children?
He is not killing children.
No,
They-
well,
they
look,
took
let me rephrase, not him first.
No. The Russian army is not killing children. They say they kidnapped a million. Yes, that's the American version. The Russian version, they took them out of the war zone, put them into safety across the border, and they're taking care of them. That's the Russian version.
Okay, what
So
I
which
mean
is
by
true.
killing children is bombing buildings where people live. People die
True.
because.
There are buildings which are bombed. Because Ukraine, which is suffering great losses, is determined to place armaments in sensitive places. This is where the children are being bombed.
Yeah, you say a building and the Ukrainians have their, fighters in the building so that then when the fighting goes on, okay.
But the thing is, isn't it human nature to defend yourself? More, the mining,
I have to go, Bill has a doctor's appointment, oh, it's a rheumatologist, yeah.
oh dear.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you.
Good to see
Nice meeting you. You're capable of opening the door all by
Oh,
yourself.
yeah, thank you.
And, the landmines. And,
Yeah.
so my thing is just the.
Wait,
the
just
destruction,
wait, let her finish the question, wait.
all of the destruction, all of the killing, all of the destroying of the land that you thirst, and all of this, I can't understand us humans.
Nice to see.
A war is declared, somebody attacks a country or invades a country. The people, of course, they're gonna try to defend themselves, and so when you say the Ukrainians are putting armaments in the buildings, so the Russians, they're at war with each other, so they bomb the buildings. Too bad people are living there and lose everything, and so it doesn't make sense to me.
Let me ask you a question. Does it make sense for us, for President Biden to send deplete uranium? That is going to poison Ukraine. It's not
Cluster
going-
bombs,
No, it doesn't make sense, and that's part of my thing, I can't understand humanity, I guess, that we are so, bent on possession, profit, that we're willing to sacrifice the planet in a way, cultures. I've never been able to understand it. Slavery, I've never been able to.
I was just going to say, it was very lucrative to have people work for nothing.
Well, yes, you're right. Yeah, that's true. And I say that that's why they do. But then on the other hand, I said, well, if they needed workers in the land, they could have set up a different system of payment, in time of something or other, but to enslave people because of the economics of
But you can say inferior, who cares?
So that's what I'm saying. I guess my thinking about and how I was raised and thinking about goodness the Ten Commandments, whatever, and it just puzzles me that we are so act in such opposite ways of the ethics of the better angels or ourselves. And it keeps going on and on and on. You know, Africa, what's going on, what is it, the Sudan, the African countries, that those tribes are those generals, Haiti, what's going on in Haiti, drugs. It just puzzles me. And I think of you as a kind of a philosopher person.
Historian.
And yeah, and that too, and the book, and you know, I was very favorably impressed with the book, and that's why I'm trying to help as much as I can to spread the word.
Very
But
appreciated.
anyway, it's just so counter to what I was raised to believe and how I've tried conducting myself, and that's why I asked you about hope, and that I brought up AI. I know Gloria. Oh, she's back, I guess.
She's back, yeah.
Can you hear Gloria?
Oh, now
Yeah.
it's just Gloria, the others are gone.
Yeah, anyway, and we have discussed AI, and I know what she's saying, but my thing is that that's what the world is saying, and that's what is, I don't believe it. But that's what we're being exposed to. So
You see-
buzzword, yes, that's true, but that's what we're being exposed to.
Well, don't you get it? Some people are superior and some people are inferior. And the people
but
who are superior deserve to run the world and
I
take care
understand
of
that.
those inferior
Yeah,
people.
I understand
They
that.
get in the
But I
way.
guess my basic question is that, why? I understand how it happens and why it happens, and it perpetuates itself and keeps going. But I like to think that as human beings, we're more alike than we are different.
Well, of
And
course
so
we
it's not right or good or fair or equal or whatever. You know, my thing about all men are created equal in my mind, because I have a science background, is that we all come from an egg and sperm. And that to me is what makes it